Welcome back, Ivan, and thanks for joining us again. Today we're talking about usability studies in process transformation. So why don't we start out with what is something a process transformation team can do beyond the playback to really study and experience what their users are doing?
Playback is a great mechanism to confirm requirements, to ensure that the solution is being built based on what the users expect to see. But largely one shortcoming of it is that we're just showing. We're showing to end users what the solution will be. We're talking through the workflow. We're talking through what people would do with it, but we're not actually giving it to them to play around with it. So one key thing that they can do very early on, as soon as you have the UIs, as soon as you have some sort of process behind it, is just sit down users with the app and give them very high-level instructions about the goal being get to a certain step in the process. And they basically have to just navigate it themselves, navigate the portal, navigate the tasks, navigate all the other parts of the application. And from our perspective, we are learning how people would actually use this system. So the user study is a critical tool in understanding how people use the system.
So no tools behind that, you're just kind of standing behind them, watching them do it?
Yeah, so there are certain tools that can help you, especially if there's a very diverse workforce. If you are looking at a typical process implementation, you're going to have maybe 12 subject matter experts or less that are aiding you from day to day, but the solution may be deployed to thousands. So we have different tools, for example, CX Insights, which allows us to gather information about how individuals use the application remotely. But as far as actual just practices, user studies is the simplest one, and it's simply sitting with the person and watching how they use the solution.
So would you do these user studies before actual release to production, or do you do them afterwards? Is it something that is ongoing at all times?
Yeah, the earlier the better. If we can do it as early as maybe even playback 2, when we just have a UI, a process, anything, we don't even need to have integrations. It's just, we just have to have something. So the earlier we do it, the more benefit we get out of it, because we can learn about how people interact with the system and provide various improvements to it.
What about for processes that have already been deployed and are in production right now? What would you do to help those users or really refine what they're doing?
Again, the approach is very similar. The approach is just observing how people use the actual solution. So I'll give you an example. A couple of years back, we built a process for an insurance company. It was a fraud investigation process based on a variety of inputs. Some of them were emails, some of them were reports. Basically compiled a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet was uploaded into BPM. And it sounded simple enough. It was basically an upload document into BPM, and they uploaded the file, and it worked great. But in sitting with the person, what we actually discovered is that there was no need to create extra copies of the spreadsheet. She was only creating copies of the spreadsheet, so then she could use the upload mechanism to then put it in BPM, but she was actually reusing the same spreadsheet, and not that much information changed. She correlated a couple things from emails, a couple of things from different systems, a couple equations, and so on. So in order to improve that, what we actually noticed to be a lot more efficient if she updated the same workbook where she was, and then simply selected the change fields and just copied them into BPM, into like an input text field. And then we had a little processing to actually parse that and analyze it. So that cut out easily a few seconds up to a minute out of every item that she was processing, and there was lots of items that she was processing, and it was a fairly sizable team. So that minor change, not only did it offer process improvement, but it also created a much more pleasant workflow for her. So she didn't feel like she was doing something just to fit it into the mold of the system. She was just doing what she needed to do, and the system worked along with it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ivan, for joining us and talking about usability studies. You can catch more videos on user experience here on our channel.